This video is about why COVID-19 is personal to me and what CBS Evening News may have missed in a recent story about the spread of COVID-19. You may want to hit the pause button when you see text slides throughout this video. My daughter is a frontline worker at a nursing home, and she was infected with COVID-19 along with many other frontline workers while wearing full PPE gear and an N95 mask. I'm asking why? What about surface transmission?
There's an alarming study tonight on how the coronavirus spreads indoors. Researchers found that social distancing by 6 feet may not be enough, especially in schools and restaurants and other buildings with limited ventilation. Here's CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook.
As students head back to school, parents and teachers are increasingly concerned about how coronavirus could spread, especially in buildings with inadequate ventilation.
Stop right there. CBS is showing disinfectant being sprayed on surfaces. But the question remains, what disinfectant is it? What does the EPA registered label say? And are the people disinfecting following the EPA registered label? What does the CDC have to say? Well, the CDC quotes the authority of the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, otherwise known as FIFRA. Specifically, it states it is a violation of federal law to use this product in a manner inconsistent with its labeling, and the product means the EPA registered disinfectant.
John Lednitsky studies viruses at the University of Florida.
There was a lot of controversy about SARS coronavirus 2 being transmitted or not being transmitted through airborne routes.
Analyzing air samples in a hospital room, Lednitsky's team found infectious virus can spread through the air up to 16 feet away from an infected patient through tiny droplets called aerosols.
This is the smoking gun that everybody's been asking for.
Okay, let's stop right there again. If we're going to talk about a smoking gun, what about the other research that has not been widely covered in the media from the University of Minnesota? Droplet residue indicating coronavirus survivability on surfaces, and risk assessment of airborne transmission of COVID-19. Where do we think the droplets ultimately end up if they go past 6 feet and they linger in the air? Like dust on your mantle, eventually the virus ends up on a surface. As cited directly in this research, it has been well accepted that the virus causing the disease can be transmitted through contact of virus-laden respiratory droplets on surfaces. Our results suggest that even tiny droplets can leave residues under moderately high humidity.
Lindsay Marr studies how viruses travel through the air.
We're talking about virus that is present in very small droplets, tiny ones that we call aerosols, that can travel much farther through the air and remain in the air for minutes to hours at a time.
Again, from the University of Minnesota research, these deposited particles contribute to the long-lasting surface infectivity. Ventilation at a single location is highly inefficient at removing particles. This result suggests that improvements to air filters alone are not enough to reduce the particle concentration.
That's important because until recently, attention has mainly focused on respiratory spread of virus within 6 feet. Aerosols can be produced just by talking.
Okay, stop again. Look at the CBS News animation. Look at the particles in the air. Not just nursing homes. What about schools? And these droplets ending up on surfaces. Now think about schools, nursing homes, and back to the University of Minnesota research. Ventilation can also enhance particle deposition on surfaces. So why don't we talk about surface transmission a little more?
This classroom simulation shows how spread of virus is significantly cut down simply by placing ventilation near a teacher.
Once we acknowledge that virus is transmitting through aerosols, we can then take steps to address that and to reduce that risk.
Okay, let's stop right there again and talk about risk. Did you know paper towels and cotton rags deactivate disinfectant? It's called quat binding. So, what does one of the leading disinfection experts, Daryl Hicks, have to say about all this? Here's what he says. As soon as this quat binding phenomenon occurs, the quat disinfectant is off label and in violation of federal law. That would be the FIFRA law. It's time to talk about this. And Daryl Hicks goes on to say, but even worse, some know about quat binding and choose to ignore it. And what does healthcare risk mitigation expert John Scherberger have to say? Well, he says failure to recognize the importance of the negative effects of quat binding is careless and shows indifference to the health of their staff and building occupants. Did you know if you're concerned about a school, a nursing home, restaurant, or a grocery store, you can test yourself if the disinfectant is off label and in violation of federal law. To learn more, you can email me smith@aqflx.com. That's smith@aqflx.com.